What's going on, guys? It's Danny from Fantasy Stock Exchange here, and today I'll be going through the 10 biggest values on the ESPN platform ADP relative to Sharp ADP, giving you guys an outline to names you should be monitoring when entering your ESPN draft compared to the sharpest ADP in Fantasyland with Underdog Fantasy. This will be a short video just outlining the big values on where the Sharps are drafting certain players versus where these sites have them ranked, so that when you are drafting in your leagues on ESPN, you know who the biggest targets are relative to where these sharps take them. The reason this can be super helpful is that for most of you playing in casual leagues, your sheep league mates will just blindly follow ADP, especially in those mid to late rounds. So you should be cognizant of the site you're using and where the value is at as you go through your draft. Let us know what other sites you want covered. Corey would have done Sleeper yesterday. Obviously, ESPN today. We're planning on doing NFL Fantasy and Yahoo's. But again, leave in the comments down below what sites you want covered in this series. But before we get into the list, as always, we're going to hit the intro. All right, I'm going to list off the biggest values in the top 50. Again, not going to go too far in depth here. For the purpose of the overall video today, I'll be talking about guys in the top 100 on Underdog Fantasy versus where their ADP resides on ESPN. But let's just get a look at what the top 50, the biggest differences in the top 50 would look like. And you guys can see on the screen, guys like Allen Robinson, Juju Smith-Schuster, Travis Etienne in particular. We're going to go in more depth, as you guys will see later in the video. But the main guys I kind of want to outline in this range before we get into the full video is Gabe Davis, 43 overall on Underdog, going 67th on ESPN, a clear breakout candidate operating as that clear-cut wide receiver 2, especially in 2 wide receiver sets for the Buffalo Bills. 43, I'm out on in terms of Underdog Fantasy. Wide receiver 26, I think is a little bit too high for him. But in terms of home leagues, 67th overall, the risk reward at that point is completely baked in. Perfectly fine with getting Gabe Davis at that 67th overall ADP on ESPN. A couple of the guys I wanted to completely make reference to before we get into the video is Saquon Barkley in particular. 27th overall ADP on ESPN, 15th overall on Underdog Fantasy. And with Saquon Barkley, it's pretty simple. He is that archetype of running back I want to anchor my fantasy football team. So the fact that on ESPN, you can get him in the 3rd round paired with, teams with Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, or a guy like Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, and being able to pair that with a guy like Saquon Barkley on the 2-3 turn on ESPN is going to make you an absolutely dominant team. So love Saquon Barkley. I like Mike Evans' value as well there, but let's get into the 10 official favorite values between Underdog and ESPN in correspondence with my own ranking. So kicking off the list, wide receiver from the Los Angeles Rams, we're going to be talking about Allen Robinson. And with Allen Robinson's current ADP on ESPN, you guys can see 39th overall on Underdog Fantasy, 76th overall on ESPN. I not only think he has relative bang for your buck value, I think he's got legitimate league winning upside. There's obviously, with the 39th overall ADP, a clear best ball element to where he goes on Underdog. But I do think that even in redraft, he is value at that 39th overall pick. I think it's much more in line with his true projection. A clear-cut number 2 overall option on what should be a top 5 passing attack with the Los Angeles Rams. Again, there's some concern from many in the community, maybe as to why he's going 76th overall on ESPN, that maybe Allen Robinson fell off as a player, but a lot of my ease was rested once I saw Matt Harmon's perception profile for Allen Robinson being about in line with what we've seen from the past in terms of being a good separator on what was quite simply a desolate offense last year with the Chicago Bears. So for me, I'm expecting a huge bounce back from Allen Robinson, and getting him in the heap of the running back dead zone from your home leagues can pay off in a massive way, in my opinion. The next player we want to talk about is Elijah Moore, wide receiver from the New York Jets, currently going off the board 101st overall in ESPN leagues, 66th on Underdog Fantasy. And right next to Allen Robinson in terms of value differential is Elijah Moore, 37th, 35th overall, respectively, between their Underdog versus their ESPN ADP. Elijah Moore has the exact profile we look for when determining wide receiver breakouts every year. He's young, going into his 2nd year, a historical year for breakout wide receivers. He's had a period of dominance this past year where there was a portion of last year when he was healthy where he showed top 10 level upside. and has an opportunity to lead the Jets in targets. I already thought that 66th overall was a nice discount on Moore for the breakout potential he has. But the fact that you're able to get him at pick 101 on ESPN in home leagues is truly a climb. You can get him as your wide receiver 6 on teams. And the fact that Sharps recognize this is really telling, especially considering the fact that Moore does not have that premier quarterback to stack with on Underdog Fantasy. So again, wide receiver 6 on your team at 101st overall. Absolute steal for Elijah Moore on ESPN leagues. If you are in ESPN, make sure that these two guys are on your team. The next player I'm going to be talking about is going to be rookie running back sensation Dameon Pierce, going off the board 100th overall in Underdog Fantasy. By the way, an ADP I expect to shoot up based off his preseason performance. Still only going 134th overall on ESPN leagues. And all reports out of Houston indicate that Pierce is viewed as this team's lead back. He's impressed the coaching staff enough for them to rest him during that team's second preseason game on a quote to get a look at other backs. He played this past preseason game, was absolutely dominant in that third preseason game, ended off a phenomenal preseason outing for Dameon Pierce. And he, to me, presents a similar situation to what we saw from Michael Carter going into last year. Only instead of a 5'8", 200-pound scat back, we're looking at a potential workhorse 5'10", 220-pounder that an NFL team may be able to rely upon to hold that 3-down workload. And outside of the dead zone, we target upside at the running back position. In my opinion, every indicator from Pierce's camp seems like he could be in store for an RB1 level opportunity. And in my opinion, presents RB2 plus upside being taken outside of the top 100 in home leagues. He is a perfect running back to target on all teams, but specifically if you went 0 RB, if you grab, one or two running backs early and then just faded it throughout the dead zone, I think Pierce is the perfect RB2, RB3, RB4 type to add to your team in this range. 134th overall, it's criminal, especially on a site that typically has a lot of bias towards the running back position. The next two players I'm just going to join up together, and it's going to be the 49ers stack with Trey Lance and Brandon Ayuk. Trey Lance going off the board 68th overall on Underdog, 100th overall on ESPN. Brandon Ayuk 70th overall on Underdog, 102nd overall on ESPN. Basically, the fact that these guys are 2 picks separated on both platforms and are absolutely one of the more fun stacks to build in both Underdog and on your ESPN home leagues. I think that with Trey Lance, it's easier for me to understand why the public is lower on him than Sharps, obviously due to the fact that with the public, they want to avoid uncertainty. They want to go with the safety options. And realistically, with Trey Lance, as much as I love the talent, as much as I love the ability, he's getting selected in the range of, Matthew Stafford, Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson types that the public just has a much safer feeling with drafting them as their quarterback as opposed to Trey Lance. For me personally, I actually think Trey Lance is the safer quarterback due to what he can do with his legs. Think Jalen Hurts from last year, but in an offense with a better scheme, better weapons, and in my opinion, Trey Lance has better arm talent than Jalen Hurts does. I think the ceiling could be, quarterback 3, quarterback 4 on the season with Trey Lance. So getting that as the 100th overall pick in home leagues, being able to punt the quarterback position and still get a guy like Trey Lance selected outside of the top 12, absolutely phenomenal value there. The next player, obviously, in conjunction with him is Brandon Ayuk, his teammate. And with Brandon Ayuk, we saw him return to that dominant rookie form he showed once he was able to escape Kyle Shanahan's doghouse. He is the type of ascending third-year wide receiver archetype I want to be smashing in my drafts, and yet he somehow goes outside of the top 100. As I mentioned with Elijah Moore, you can get him as your wide receiver 6 on your team. Heck, if you want to pair Trey Lance and Brandon Ayuk on that round 9, round 10 term, I think that's a phenomenal allocation of your resources with these two guys. The next player I'm going to be talking about, and one that honestly threw me for a loop given casual dependence on running back bias, is A.J. Dillon, 64th overall in Underdog Fantasy, 96th overall on Home League ESPN ADP. I expected Home Leagues, again, to value him more, or at least comparably to how Underdog drafts him, but he's almost falling outside of the top 100. It's weird to me that, guys like Elijah Mitchell, David Montgomery, Josh Jacobs, other dead zone running backs are either at their ADP or higher, and yet A.J. Dillon is falling so dramatically low compared to where he goes on Underdog. To me, it's pretty simple. Dillon presents a running back with standalone value, 13.6 opportunities per game week 4 on last year. on an offense with elite upside in Green Bay, especially if Jones were to miss any time. He, to me, is what I call a standalone cuff in the sense that for one of the premier offenses in the league, you're getting a profile that should be able to return, RB2 level production on his own. But if Aaron Jones were to miss any time, we are talking about a legitimate top 5 running back in fantasy land. So being able to smash out, hero or double hero running back, stacking a bunch of pass catchers and elite onesies in the mid rounds, and then wrapping your round 8 on with AJ Dillon, Dameon Pierce types is just the nuts, in my opinion. The next player we're going to talk about is the new wide receiver 1 in Baltimore with Rashod Bateman. And, speaking of another young ascending player, Rashod Bateman is that pristine prospect that, despite dealing with injuries in his rookie season, really showed flashes to potentially develop into a true wide receiver 1 in this league. His reception perception profile is pristine across the board, 70th plus percentile in man, press, and zone coverage, and now has an opportunity to operate as the number 2 target on this offense behind Mark Andrews with the recent Marquise Brown trade at the NFL draft. I think Bateman is a player flirting with wide receiver 2 status on both Underdog and in my own rankings, and it is being drafted after guys like Hunter Renfrow, Miles Sanders, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire on ESPN. So make sure you scoop up Rashod Bateman, a prospect this year, the next player we're going to be talking about, that really profiles similar to what I saw from Rashod Bateman going into last year. Chris Olave, the wide receiver from the New Orleans Saints, he is an explosive rookie wide receiver for the Saints that has all of the opportunity to emerge as the number 2 or number 3 weapon in this offense, and what I expect to be one of the most improved offenses in the league this year with Jameis Winston's return to action. It's pretty simple to me. He's a 22-year-old route technician with 11th overall draft capital on a good offense. In my opinion, he's poised to potentially threaten as the most productive rookie receiver this year. And with his ADP being outside of the top 100, you can load him up again as your wide receiver 6, your wide receiver 7 on most teams. And he's a player, in my opinion, with legit top 24 upside on the Saints, even if Michael Thomas playing. If Michael Thomas were to miss any time, I think Chris Olave has legitimate top 15 overall upside at the wide receiver position. And I think he's an absolute steal given 116th overall ADP. I'm fine with him at 87th overall. 116th overall is just absolutely ludicrous. Next player, a guy that I'm admittedly not the highest on, as you guys would know from watching the channel, but Juju Smith-Schuster, wide receiver from the Kansas City Chiefs. 77th overall is just way too tempting a deal for me personally to pass on. As the Juju hater himself, I am completely out on him at the 49th overall ADP on Underdog. But at 77th overall, sign me up for a few shares with Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, the peripherals are still awesome. It's an ambiguous wide receiver room on what should be a top 5 to 10 offense in the league, tethered to the right arm of Patrick Mahomes. And while I'm lower on Juju's talent, seeing his yards per route run drop in each of the last 4 years, I'm perfectly fine with sending darts at him where that ESPN ADP lies. That opportunity cost at 77th overall is just far cheaper than having to spend 49th overall premium draft capital on Juju Smith-Schuster. Again, round 4 or 5, I am out on Juju Smith-Schuster, but if you're getting him in that round 7 type of range, perfectly fine with that investment on Juju Smith-Schuster. Next player we're going to be talking about, and one that actually was closer in ADP to where Gabe Davis was, but obviously Corey would have covered the full Gabe Davis case in yesterday's video. I really wanted to discuss Travis Etienne's value on ESPN. 52nd overall ADP on ESPN. 36th overall on Underdog, despite Underdog showing a lot of wide receiver bias, whereas Home League ADP shows a lot of running back bias, and yet there's a 16th pick differential in favor of Underdog, and it's just kind of wild for me that he's ranked outside of the top 50 in ESPN drafts. It's remarkable because he is a young running back with a 3-down skill set, explosive open field ability on an offense without a clear-cut receiver pecking order. He is everything we want to target if we were to profile a clear running back breakout in 2022. Think it as getting 2022's DeAndre Swift outside of the top 50 picks. It represents one of the rare circumstances where I'm not only fine to draft a running back in the dead zone, I am pounding the table for Travis Etienne. If you have to reach around just to make sure Travis Etienne is on your team, if you're in an ESPN league, absolutely fine with it. A player I have ranked in my top 30, going 52nd overall on ESPN. The final player of the video is going to be running back from the New England Patriots, Rhamondre Stevenson, 84th overall on Underdog, 103rd overall on Home League ADP on ESPN. And it's a really similar case to what I said about AJ Dillon and Dameon Pierce. Rhamondre Stevenson just represents the RB archetype we want to be smashing in our late rounds. And it's funny because the casual fantasy players have this weird hang up with the Patriots backfield, or, they're concerned that Damien Harris is going to be a huge part of the game plan. But my opinion, this offense will run a ton with plenty of goal line work with Mac Jones entering his second year. And with Rhamondre Stevenson, he's shown that he's going to be able to carve out a big workload on the ground, as well as take over the James White role, which leaves a vacant running back pass catcher on this team. With James White's retired due to the hip injury, Rhamondre Stevenson is the running back in this backfield that profiles the best towards third down situations, receiving situations, given what we saw from him last year and given Damien Harris's usage in the past. So absolutely love Rhamondre Stevenson. Avoid the running back dead zone where people are propping guys up based off projected workload. Take the guys based off talent. I think Rhamondre Stevenson could be this year's James Conner. If you guys enjoyed this video, we are planning to do this for NFL Fantasy and Yahoo as well, outlining, of course, the biggest differences between Sharp ADP and, multi-site, casual home league ADP across the series. Make sure you can take advantage of these biggest values. And I made a lot of reference to Underdog Fantasy throughout the video. Promo code FSC gives you 100% match back on first deposit up to $100, as well as full access to our Dynasty and Redraft rankings manifestos for free using our promo code. We're also running a special giveaway until August 27th. Signing up with promo code FSC on your first deposit will enter you for a chance to win one of 5 free $50 credits on Underdog, which you can use to enter any of their running contests. You want to enter maybe 2 BBM3s, or when the puppy comes back, you want to enter 10 puppies. The choice is up to you to win some serious cash over on Underdog Fantasy. Appreciate our main sponsor, and check out the pinned comment for full details on that contest. Either way, appreciate you guys for making it around the last 15 minutes or so. Peace out and enjoy your weekend.